Hey everyone, welcome back to Whitey Habits. I'm Steven.
And I'm Mary.
And today we're taking a deep dive into something pretty fascinating, I think, the intersection of science fiction and atheism.
Okay.
And we're going to be looking at this through the lens of Richard Dawkins' book, The God Delusion.
Interesting. So how do those two connect?
Well, it's like these two worlds, science fiction and atheism, they're constantly talking to each other.
Yeah, I see that.
They kind of influence and challenge each other.
Right.
So for our listeners who might not be too familiar with Dawkins' work, let's give a quick overview of who he is and what this book is all about.
Sounds good.
The God Delusion. It came out back in 2006, and it really caused a stir.
I bet.
Dawkins, he's a really famous evolutionary biologist.
Okay.
And he's a big voice in the secular movement. And he basically lays out this very strong argument against the idea of a creator deity.
Okay.
And he uses like scientific reasoning and logic to back up his claims.
Yeah. I can see how that would be pretty controversial.
It was definitely controversial.
So how does this tie back into science fiction then?
Well, what's really interesting is how Dawkins kind of challenges this idea that faith has to be a necessary part of believing in something, or even a rational basis for belief. He's saying that, the evidence points to a universe governed by natural laws, not some divine intervention.
I see.
And this really aligns with a lot of science fiction narratives.
Oh, okay. How so?
Well, they often explore things like the origins of the universe, the possibility of life on other planets.
Yeah.
And humanity's just constant search for meaning, It's like science fiction gives us this space to play with those big existential questions.
I like that. Yeah,
you can imagine worlds where religion is super important, or where humanity has completely ditched faith, and gone for a purely scientific view of the world.
That's fascinating. Like, we can test out different possibilities.
Exactly. And by exploring these different realities, science fiction helps us look at the relationship between science, faith, and human nature from all sorts of different angles.
I see what you mean, yeah.
It's like a playground for our minds.
Yeah.
To grapple with what all this scientific advancement could mean for our beliefs.
Makes sense.
Speaking of these really interesting discussions, I came across this episode of the Geek's Guide to the Galaxy podcast from back in 2011.
Oh, cool.
And it was completely devoted to talking about Dawkins and his impact on science fiction.
Wow.
It really showed how much his work sparked debate within the sci-fi community.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all.
No, not at all.
I mean, his idea, especially from the God Delusion, they really challenged how people thought and got them talking about the role of religion and atheism in a world that's becoming more and more shaped by science.
Exactly. And what's really interesting is that this podcast episode had listeners from all over the world.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, they had people tuning in from Algeria to Zimbabwe.
Wow.
Australia to Vietnam, Canada to Chile, everywhere.
That's amazing. So these big questions about our place in the universe, they really do resonate with people everywhere.
It seems so.
Regardless of where they come from.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really speaks to how universal these questions are. The desire to know our origins, our purpose, the meaning of life. It goes beyond any culture.
Right.
It's something that connects us all as humans.
It really is.
No matter what we believe or where we come from.
It's like we're all on this big quest for knowledge, trying to make sense of this huge, complex universe.
Absolutely. And science fiction, with its wild imagination and ability to take us to other worlds, it gives us this amazing tool to explore these deep concepts.
It does. It's like this universal language that helps us talk about these things.
It crosses borders, ideologies, everything.
It brings us together in our shared curiosity and this thirst for understanding.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
What I find really fascinating about science fiction
What's that?
is its ability to show us different perspectives.
Yeah.
It challenges those traditional stories we tell ourselves. And it really encourages us to think critically.
I agree.
It's not afraid to explore controversial ideas or push the boundaries of what we think we know.
Right, which makes it perfect for looking at the relationship between science and religion.
It does, especially when you consider Dawkins' work.
Absolutely.
It's like science fiction is this bridge between the sometimes really complicated world of scientific theory and the everyday lives of people who might not normally think about those ideas.
That's true.
It takes these abstract concepts and turns them into stories, characters, and situations we can relate to.
I like that, yeah.
It makes them easier to grasp, more engaging, and I think much more powerful.
It makes those complex ideas much more palatable.
It really does. It's like a gateway to deeper thinking.
Yeah, I love that.
It makes me wonder, how did this whole interplay between science fiction and atheism really play out in the world of literature?
That's a good question.
Were there certain authors or books that really captured this dynamic?
Well, one that immediately comes to mind is Frank Herbert's Dune.
Dune, yeah, that's a classic.
It's this epic saga where religion and politics are completely intertwined.
Right.
And the main character's journey really forces us to question things.
Like what?
Like the nature of belief, prophecy, and that blurry line between faith and fanaticism.
That's such a great example. Dune is so rich and layered.
It is.
It really digs into those big questions about faith and destiny.
Yeah, it does.
Another one that comes to mind is Solaris by Stanislaw Lem.
Oh, Solaris, yeah.
It's this hauntingly beautiful story that explores the limits of what we can understand when we come face to face with a truly alien intelligence.
That's right.
It raises these profound questions about reality, the limits of scientific knowledge, and the possibility of encountering something so different from us that it completely shakes our view of existence.
It really makes you think, doesn't it?
It's a total mind bender.
It is.
I remember finishing that book and feeling completely disoriented.
I bet.
Like my whole understanding of reality had been shifted.
That's what great science fiction does.
It does.
It pushes us out of our comfort zones, makes us confront the unknown, and consider that maybe our current understanding of the universe is, well, incomplete.
It's like science fiction gives us permission to question everything.
Yeah.
To be okay with not knowing and to revel in the mystery of it all.
Exactly. But it also reminds us of how powerful human curiosity is.
It does.
That drive to explore, to understand, to find meaning in a universe that often seems indifferent to us.
That brings us back to Dawkins' central argument in the God Delusion.
Right.
That a scientific understanding of the universe, while it might challenge traditional religious views, doesn't have to take away our sense of wonder or our search for meaning. In fact, it can make them even stronger.
It can, yeah.
By embracing a scientific worldview, we're not rejecting the awe and mystery of existence.
Right.
We're engaging with it on a different level, a level informed by reason, evidence, and this deep appreciation for how everything is connected.
That's a really powerful idea.
It is, isn't it?
It is.
But before we get too deep into that thought,
okay,
let's take a moment to hear from our sponsor.
We'll be right back with more of our deep dive into this fascinating intersection
of science fiction,
atheism, and the ideas of Richard Dawkins.
Stay with us.
And welcome back to the deep dive. Before the break, we were looking at how science fiction really digs into the whole idea of faith and reality.
Yeah, just like Dawkins' The God Delusion kind of challenges those traditional religious beliefs.
Right, exactly.
We even talked about books like Dune and Solaris.
Yeah, where you see belief systems and even our understanding of things being tested against these massive, often kind of uncaring universes.
It's wild.
It is.
And what's striking is that these stories, even though they're based on scientific concepts, they don't shy away from the unknown.
They don't. They embrace it.
They actually kind of revel in those gray areas where science and spirituality meet.
Yeah, where the search for meaning goes beyond simple answers.
It's like science fiction is reminding us that the search for knowledge isn't about finding a final answer.
Yeah.
It's about enjoying the journey of discovery.
I like that.
It's about always questioning, pushing boundaries, and realizing that our understanding of the universe is always changing.
It's a constant evolution.
It is. It makes me think of Isaac Asimov's Foundation series.
Foundation, yeah.
It shows a future where this brilliant mathematician predicts that an empire is going to fall.
Oh, wow.
And that everyone descends into chaos.
That's intense.
It is. So to save knowledge and help humanity find enlightenment again.
Okay.
He creates this foundation on a faraway planet.
The Foundation?
Yeah. And their mission is to create a collection of all human knowledge.
Wow, like a giant encyclopedia?
Yeah.
Exactly. The Encyclopedia Galactica.
That's ambitious.
Oh, it is.
Asimov was amazing at weaving these complex scientific and social ideas into such compelling stories.
He was a master, wasn't he?
He was.
So in this case, science itself becomes like a savior.
Okay.
A guiding light in the darkness of ignorance.
I see. It becomes a tool to shape our destiny, to overcome these huge challenges.
Right, but it's not presented as a simple solution.
No, of course not.
The Foundation faces internal conflicts, political maneuvering, and just the unpredictable nature of humans.
Yeah, humans are unpredictable.
Oh, we are.
Asimov shows us that even with the best intentions and all the knowledge in the world, the future is still uncertain.
Yeah, it is.
Speaking of uncertainty, what about Arthur C. Clarke's Childhood's End?
Oh, Childhood's End, that's a good one.
It deals with the impact of meeting a much more advanced alien intelligence.
Right.
And how that affects humanity, especially our religious beliefs.
Especially when you're suddenly confronted with undeniable proof of alien life. Exactly. Clarke explores how such an event could shatter our existing beliefs.
Oh, yeah.
And force us to rethink our place in the universe.
The whole idea of God is challenged.
It is.
Individuals and societies have to wrestle with these huge existential questions.
On a scale they've never imagined before.
These stories, Foundation, Childhood's End, they show how science fiction can be a powerful tool for social commentary.
Yeah, they use these Asini scenarios to hold up a mirror to our own world. Our own anxieties, our struggles to understand a universe that often seems indifferent.
And that brings us back to Dawkins.
Right, back to Dawkins.
His work, even though it's often divisive.
It is.
It's definitely contributed to this conversation about faith and reason.
In a world increasingly shaped by scientific discoveries.
He's challenged traditional religious stories, made people think critically, and forced them to really look at their own beliefs.
Whether you agree with his conclusions or not, you can't deny the impact he's had.
You really can't.
And science fiction, because it reaches so many people, it's played a big part in spreading these ideas.
It has.
Sparking imaginations and fueling those debates about what it means to exist.
It's like science fiction is this bridge between the intimidating world of scientific theory and the everyday lives of people who might not usually think about those things.
Right. It takes those abstract ideas and turns them into stories and characters we can relate to.
Exactly, making them more accessible, engaging, and ultimately more powerful.
More impactful.
It's like a secret door into a world of profound ideas, disguised as exciting adventures.
I love that.
And mind-blowing possibilities.
Yeah, it's true.
But I'm curious, beyond the classics we've talked about, are there any contemporary science fiction authors you think are carrying this torch?
Oh, absolutely.
Exploring these themes for a new generation.
There's a ton of talent out there. Pushing the boundaries and tackling those big questions in fresh ways.
Give me some names.
Okay, like Ted Chiang.
Oh, I've heard of him.
His short stories often dive into the philosophical and ethical implications of advanced technology and how it impacts our consciousness and spirituality.
I've heard his writing is really thought-provoking.
It is.
Blending scientific accuracy with these deeply human stories.
Exactly.
Anyone else?
Oh, yeah. There's Anne Leckie.
Okay.
In her Imperial Ratch trilogy, she creates this fascinating society where artificial intelligence and gender identity are explored in ways that challenge our usual norms.
Wow, that sounds interesting.
It is. It makes you question the very definition of what it means to be a person.
A society where AI becomes conscious. That's a breeding ground for all sorts of ethical and philosophical dilemmas.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, who else?
And we can't forget N.K. Jemisin.
Oh, Jemisin, I've heard of her.
Her Broken Earth trilogy mixes fantasy and science fiction.
Okay.
To create a world dealing with climate catastrophe and social injustice.
Wow, that's powerful.
It's a really timely exploration of how power structures, both human and environmental, shape how we see the world.
I've heard her work is incredible.
It is. She's a master at world building.
She really weaves together these complex narratives that are captivating and so relevant to what we're facing today.
It's an amazing time to be into science fiction.
It really is.
With authors like Chiang, Leckie, and Jemisin pushing the limits of the genre.
Yeah.
There's always something new and thought-provoking to discover.
It shows the enduring power of science fiction.
It does.
To engage with these really big questions about who we are, where we're going, and the nature of reality itself.
I think it's amazing how science fiction, while being rooted in imagination, can anticipate and reflect on real-world issues.
It's like looking into a crystal ball.
Yeah, kind of.
It lets us examine what might happen, ethical dilemmas, and how advances in technology could change our understanding of ourselves and the universe.
Exactly. It's like holding up a mirror to our own anxieties and hopes.
In the always evolving relationship between humans and the forces shaping our world. But as we get deeper into this connection between science fiction and atheism, I can't help but wonder if we're oversimplifying things.
What do you mean?
The complexities of faith and belief. Is there a risk of presenting a black and white view where science and religion are always at odds?
Instead of recognizing that they can coexist.
Yeah, that there are nuances.
That's a really good point, and it's something we need to think about carefully.
Yeah.
It's true that some science fiction, especially the hard sci-fi stuff, might lean towards a universe ruled only by natural laws,
right,
where religious beliefs are seen as outdated.
Like leftovers from a less enlightened time.
Yeah, I can see how that could happen.
The focus on logic, reason, and science could lead to dismissing the spiritual or intangible as just superstition.
It could, but we have to remember that science fiction is a huge and diverse genre.
It's true.
There's so many different subgenres in individual works.
Yeah.
You'll find a whole spectrum of views on the relationship between science, spirituality, and the search for meaning.
So it's not all about a purely materialistic worldview.
No, not at all.
That's a relief. I wouldn't want science fiction to limit itself like that.
No, there are plenty of stories that embrace the mystical, the spiritual, the things we can't explain.
Okay.
Even while recognizing the power and importance of science.
So it's not always about picking a side.
Right.
It's more about exploring how these seemingly opposite forces interact.
Exactly. That's a much more nuanced and interesting way to look at it.
I agree.
It allows for a richer exploration of what it means to be human, recognizing that our understanding of the world isn't always black and white.
It's not.
There's room for both the rational and the irrational.
Yeah.
The scientific and the spiritual.
And it reflects the reality that even among scientists, there are people who have religious beliefs.
Right.
And they don't see a conflict between their faith and their work.
Exactly. It reminds us that these categories we create,
like science versus religion, atheism versus theism.
Yeah, they're often more fluid and less absolute than we think.
Humans are complex, aren't we?
We are.
We crave knowledge and meaning.
We want to understand the universe through reason and faith.
And science fiction, with its limitless potential for exploration and imagination.
Yeah.
It's the perfect place to show this dance between the scientific and the spiritual.
I like that it's like science fiction invites us to embrace the paradox.
The paradox.
Yeah, to acknowledge that the universe is a place of wonder and mystery.
Okay.
Where scientific discoveries can exist alongside the questions that have always haunted us.
Since the beginning of consciousness.
It's in those unanswerable questions, those lingering mysteries, that we often find the greatest inspiration for stories.
That makes sense.
For exploring what it means to be human, for pushing the limits of what we know.
I love that.
But as much as we'd like to keep thinking about these mysteries, we are running out of time for this part of our deep dive.
I know. Time flies when you're having fun.
It does.
Don't worry, everyone. We'll be back after a quick word from our sponsors.
To continue exploring these fascinating connections between science fiction, atheism, and the relationship between faith and reason.
Stay tuned. And welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into science fiction, atheism, and the thought-provoking ideas of Richard Dawkins.
We've explored so much already.
We have, haven't we? We've seen how science fiction often tackles these really fundamental questions about our existence. And we've even considered whether it offers a different perspective compared to traditional religious explanations.
It's been a fascinating journey.
It has. But there's one intriguing aspect we haven't fully explored yet.
What's that?
The global reach of both Dawkins' work and science fiction itself.
Oh, right. Like how those themes resonate with people from all over the world.
Remember that 2011 episode of Geek's Guide to the Galaxy we mentioned?
Yeah, the one dedicated to Dawkins and science fiction.
It had listeners from all corners of the globe.
It's amazing how these big questions about our place in the universe seem to connect with people regardless of where they're from.
It's like we're all united by this innate curiosity, this shared desire to understand where we come from, why we're here, and what it all means.
And science fiction, with its imaginative exploration of all these possibilities, it provides a kind of universal language for engaging with these questions.
It does, doesn't it? Regardless of your background or beliefs.
It's like we're all gathered around this cosmic campfire, sharing stories and searching for meaning among the stars.
I love that image.
It really captures how science fiction can transcend borders and ideologies.
It creates a space for dialogue and contemplation on a global scale.
It reminds us that even with all our differences, we share a common humanity, a sense of wonder in the face of the universe's mysteries.
And maybe, through exploring these questions, through immersing ourselves in science fiction, we might even get a little closer to unraveling those mysteries.
Or at least spark some really interesting conversations along the way.
Speaking of interesting conversations, before we wrap up,
Okay.
there's one more thought I wanted to touch upon.
Go ahead.
We've talked about how science fiction often explores themes that align with atheistic viewpoints, challenging traditional religious narratives.
Right.
But aren't there also science fiction stories that grapple with faith and spirituality?
Absolutely.
In ways that don't necessarily reject the idea of a higher power?
There are. Science fiction is such a diverse genre.
It is.
It embraces a whole range of perspectives on the relationship between science, spirituality, and the search for meaning.
So it's not all about a purely materialistic worldview.
Not at all.
I'm thinking of C.S. Lewis's Space Trilogy.
Oh, yeah, classic.
Though often categorized as science fantasy.
It is a bit of a blend, isn't it?
It beautifully combines elements of Christian theology with interplanetary adventures.
Lewis was a master at that.
He was. He explored themes of good versus evil, redemption, and the nature of divine grace.
All through the lens of space travel and encounters with aliens.
It shows how science fiction can be a vehicle for expressing diverse philosophical and religious views.
Exactly. It challenges the idea that science fiction is inherently anti-religious or only for secular audiences.
Some even argue that science fiction, with its exploration of vast cosmic scales and the potential for life beyond Earth, can actually deepen our sense of awe and wonder.
It can.
Prompting us to consider the possibility of a creative force behind it all.
It's like the more we learn about the universe, the more we realize how much we don't know.
And that mystery can be a source of both scientific inquiry and spiritual contemplation.
I like that.
So, as we conclude our deep dive into this fascinating intersection of science fiction, atheism, and the human search for meaning, we encourage you, our listeners, to continue exploring these themes for yourselves.
Pick up a thought-provoking book.
Yeah.
Engage in discussions, challenge your own beliefs.
And most importantly, embrace the wonder and mystery of it all.
Well said.
And if you enjoyed our exploration today, don't forget to subscribe to Mighty Habits for more deep dives into intriguing topics.
We'll see you next time.
Keep those minds curious.
And those imaginations firing.